Here we are entering what the pure January turn. Got a real problem. Ice pack up here. Now, luckily for the Swedes, no gale formed up here. That would have been really troublesome. There's a storm up there, but I'm ignoring them from now on. I decided they're too much effort to deal with when ships are just in port. They probably aren't going to be able to be affected by them. And that's at the designer's suggestion there, as well as in the rules. So the Swedes are going to have to try to work their way back. If they can make it, Malmo Hus, what is this? Helsingborg, Gothenburg are my choices. Neither one's a great choice. They don't have a lot of repair rolls. The fleet is in really terrible shape, but they do want to land somewhere as quickly as they can and try to get out of here. They may not make it. They may be stuck at sea all winter or something. We'll see. But they're... Oh, wait. Yeah, that's not... Oslo, though, does not have an ice cap, so... Oh, no. That's Danish. I don't think they can just sail into a Danish port. Alright, so... That's kind of where we are. Oh. I got things... No, those are... That's the Dalkarlian campaign. So we got kind of a rush here for the Swedes to try to get into port. The ice is coating all their ports on the way up. Their fleet is not in good shape. If they take attrition rolls, which they will heading into, well, not rolls, but effects, heading into these, there's a good chance they'll lose their last ship of the line here. Their lighter ships are in okay shape. But both sides have taken tremendous attrition losses this year, or last year, and last campaigning season for the navies. And that's something that's not really able to be recovered from. Alright. Well, I was wrong. Malmo is iced in, so the Swedes were able to make it into Helsingborg. However, they lost their ship of the line on the way. Otherwise, we're just doing repairs. And just moving on. There's no truce or anything, but there's nothing you can do in this kind of weather. There's an enforced peace every winter. It's just so bad. The idea of moving. Once the campaigning season starts, your army is so much more capable of handling itself. You can risk things in the winter. There's no absolute prohibition as there is in some games. You just pay the consequences, and it is much better to let your army recover than maybe to try to move it and fight the opponent, because you will take the worst of the situation if you're continuously moving. You also will be dealing without supply and stuff like that. And it's a good time to start recovering the operation points. It all works rather organically. The causes that are in place that make people make the decisions are making you make the decisions here, rather than the game system saying, yeah, you know, February or November you have to be in camp. You just automatically, the campaign stops, or you roll a die and see when the campaign stops. A lot of games do things that way. I find it very refreshing to see something really kind of letting you have this kind of insight into you know, why the decisions were made the way they were. That's something that I like to see. I like to see why I would make these decisions. I like to see, hey, I made a mistake. It would have made sense for me to keep pounding on those Russians, even though it would mean a winter campaign. That may have been a little gamey, the quarterly turn aspect. That the armies are only at their worst there, but it's the idea of stretching that campaign a little further because they are so bad. They're in such bad shape. All right, push through a couple of quick turns here, just doing administrative functionality, really. I'm up into the March-April turn, actually. Now, you know, just repairs and such not, and looking forward to the next turn. The problem is the ice pack's still over to here. What's the chance of it breaking in this next turn? That's one of the things that you have to decide as to whether or not you want to launch ships, and I think the answer is no, because it's got to break here to do anything, but it's got to break up here to do anything of value, right? And that the B-class ports over here, they stay frozen for a long time. So I'm not even going to look that up at this point, I guess. Why not? Yeah, I like to spin in place. So this will be the turn, and the B ports, only a very limited chance. And likewise, when we look over here, what's the weather going to be like? We're heading into here. Well, on a 3 or 4, you have frost, which isn't terrible. Frost is just increased AC effects. Rivers actually become easier to cross because they're frozen over. So that's not a really bad result, but that's very unlikely again. The other results, mud and snow, man, you don't want to conduct a campaign in those if you can help it. So nobody's placing anything, not even a defensive campaign, and we're seeing these points accumulating. We got a couple more Swedish units coming in, ready to set sail. I don't remember if I can, sort of head south along this route without having to roll on that table for reinforcements. I seem to remember that you can, and actually that might have gotten me Swedes on the board last year in a way that I haven't been able to get them on the board. But, militarily I think they're doing an okay job. The main problem they have is I just haven't moved enough of my well, I don't have that many. I was going to say is I haven't moved enough of my auxiliaries to do much, but I don't have all that many that are terribly interesting. What am I sending into play here? Sending a line infantry. I'm going to send another grenadier unit instead of one of these line infantry. That's something I think I could use, and they're particularly helpful. They give an extra point. But the other thing is, I'd like to send my artillery. That might be kind of cool, because I have a real lack of artillery compared to the Russians, and that's where I've really been kind of at a weak spot. But the Russians actually have significantly more artillery on the board that they could bring into play if I start challenging their artillery capabilities. That whatever I can bring in, it's just going to be too much. The Russians have too much for me to face. So I probably shouldn't go for parity there. I've kind of been winning the cav battles in the battle itself. What I haven't really had is enough auxiliaries for that, but I have a couple of them, which is what I kind of need. What I didn't have was 2 grenadiers, so an extra grenadier in there will help. All right, well, we're moving to spring. That'll still be another just purely administrative turn. And worse, it's a quarterly turn, which means the game could end, or at least the Russian-Swedish war. I may continue on and see what's up with the Danes, depending on how far they move. Because historically, it was after the peace that the Danes came in. And then, if that happens, we'll essentially just be playing the Summer Scrala game. I can just clean up the land side of things and only play this to see whether or not either the Russians or Swedes can gain some advantages over here on the prestige chart. Of course, if this is at all accurate, and who knows, I made so many mistakes and tried to tweak it so much, but I think it's fairly close. If that's at all accurate, the Swedes have won the naval war very, very much. And the Russians, they have a significant advantage in the land war, so the Swedes kind of want the war to go on, but do they want to risk fighting their way through and see if they can win? They'd kind of like to see the Russians push against them, take a defeat, and then push back. Will the Russians oblige them in that? Yeah, I'm not the kind of person to just sit on a win. Both sides are going to be trying to do better. One of the reasons for that is there is sort of this underlying, I don't remember where the charts are, but remember you can buy advantages at the end of a game? Well, I kind of take that as an underlying impetus, a metagame or whatever, that lets you say, beating the enemy by a lot is better than beating him by a little. It gives that added little factor into the whole thing. And I like that anyhow. Granted, I'm not going to be using it particularly, but I like things that drive you in that direction. So we'll go with that. Oh, I mean, we will continue to try to win this game. Otherwise, people would just surrender, right? You know, hey, no reason to do anything here with the Russians. Yeah, well, yeah, there is. Interestingly, we move into the April-May turn. All the ice went away, but we still had snow throughout the land area. Okay. A little bit of, with all the ice going away, Swedes start building their troop convoy. They're preparing an escort. They've got a fleet that they're ready to assign. The Russians have a fleet they're ready to assign orders to. Both drew 1 orders. I'm not sure. The way the rules are written, it sounds like you can keep making draws as much as you like. There's a danger. I don't know. To some extent, I feel restrained to not do that, but I think that's how the rules actually cope with it. Anyway, I'm just pulling 2 orders. I pick one, throw them back whenever I like. In both cases, they got cruise orders. The Swedish one is to cruise down here in the southeast Baltic. The Russians actually got that option and chose instead to take that cruise Gotland again. They liked that little route that they had there. If they're going to get an order, it might as well be one that's keeping them active down here. Right now, heading down here doesn't really help them. But the Swedes took what they could get. They're also going to have an escort order, though. So they're immediately kind of gathering the possibility for more prestige over here. The Swedes had to go on defensive. But next turn, which is going to be this April-May turn, is still likely to be a mud turn, which will flood the rivers. It's also otherwise likely to be wet, but that's okay. Wet's not terribly bad. Wet just increases the movement point costs of things. But the mud would wipe out the roads, okay, but it would also cause a couple of rivers to have to be crossed. That's something I don't really want to face with the Russians. I think I only have 1 pontooner available. Wait, he's not even available. So yeah, I'd have real trouble crossing those rivers. You know, I would rather hold off for a little bit. And I managed to gather another operations point for that. But the Swedes couldn't take the chance because they're exposed out here. If they didn't take their defensive campaign, they couldn't fall back. Of course, the Swedes could have pulled a trump on the Russians, but again, the terrain doesn't look good for an attack at this point, and the Swedes really want the Russians to make the first attack. They want to beat them and then move on and try to pursue them, what they should have done maybe at the end of the winter. Anyway, what that means is, essentially, there's not going to be much on the land. The Swedes might pull back to their city and fort, but they might not. This is not a terribly bad location for them to be in, regardless. Anyway, we will definitely see some naval action. We may see some storms and the like coming up. We'll see what happens. The Russians didn't get their support fleet yet. Not sure how much good it really does, although there is a very good chance that if I get the support fleet, or maybe I'll just make a fleet to do support, I'll be carrying a depot to help me, because this and then over to Abo, that's a big jump. It's going to be very hard for me to make that move quickly. Of course, I also have to take this out to force the Swedes completely off the map, if that's an issue. I'm not sure if I really need to. All right, but we definitely have another turn. By the way, it was like 1 point off. Last turn, it was 2 points off. This turn, it's 1 point off the amount needed to end this war. The Peace of Abo result. The Danes, well, because there was progress, the Danes didn't end up moving their own factor any further. And there's kind of a problem with the Danish chart for me. If you look at this, there are no modifiers for the war is over for pushing it forward on that. I'm not sure quite how that's going to work, because clearly I think the actual war didn't happen until the peace was already in place. So there's got to be support for that. I haven't really read through the rules there as much as I'd like to. You know, I didn't read them. I skimmed them, but I didn't play with them in the first time I played. And well, I haven't gotten a chance to this time either because I haven't gotten that far. All right. As we push into the April-May turn, the first impulse of that, take a look at the land. The Swedes pulled back, took a little bit of attrition losses, but they'll get that back on the next impulse. Well, no, not impulse. On the next, well, maybe not. I was going to say on the next turn, but they don't get it at the administrative phase either because they moved this turn. And next turn they may be fighting, so it could have some actual effect. Otherwise, they have to wait till the quarter to, get some of it back, right? Because they're right on the front line there. Chances are they're going to take some significant losses. Over here, well, the Swedes suffered an event that I wasn't counting on, which was a reduction of their forces. Their 2 units, this is over on the land game, got sent into the box. I chose to take, and I'm not sure how legal this is, the ones that are coming out of Stockholm. I can't just take this troops sitting in Stockholm, I don't think. It doesn't clarify these things. I could have taken stuff from the Russians sitting over here in St. Pete. But these guys were setting out as part of that convoy. Well, they've gotten reduced to just 1 unit. I've made it the Grenadier unit. And we're escorting that, which actually we're not escorting that because we didn't assign a fleet task. We couldn't assign a fleet task. So that's going to head towards Abo because the Russian fleet is heading out as well. Now that Russian fleet's just repositioning itself for Revel. The Swedish fleet here wanted to get down to Stralsund to patrol the southern Baltic, or southeast Baltic, but this fog event came up and they'd rather not deal with that. That makes them have to make wind checks and such not, has a possibility of disrupting their formation as well. And there's also a storm brewing through there. They decided, hey, we're not in that big a hurry. We'll just stay in port until the weather looks a little nicer, which it may on this next impulse. It should. And we can see a couple of the squadrons have gotten into their starting places for the orders they're intending. The Swedes and the Russians both put out more squadrons. The Russians just a galley squadron out here. The Swedes have another one here because they drew an order they liked, the show of force at Kronstadt again, and they've got their big fleet. They got lucky here too. They ended up once again drawing their best admiral, which the Russians don't know about, but if they send out a Russian fleet to face it, there's a very good chance the Russians are going to get their asses handed to them there, which probably won't fix anything that's going on here. The Russians did not have the extra ships available to launch another fleet, so they're going to kind of be stuck behind. They didn't get a convoy ready to support them, and over here on the land, they kind of pulled a fast one on the Swedes. They're holding without advancing. Again, they've got enough prestige to win at least a minor victory here. I know I was saying, hey, I want to push on, but the truth of the matter is, the chances are that this next May turn is not going to be terribly pleasant to go walking either. And they need time. They need to get some clear weather so they can shift some troops up. They don't have the numbers. They have the advantage on the auxiliaries, but that's an advantage that doesn't last the whole year, essentially. They wear through them in a couple of turns, and then they're about equivalent to the Swedes. So they might as well go for the best conditions to take this. It's not going to mean the difference between victory and defeat for them. And meanwhile, they've got the Swedes with a defensive order in play, and with no real chance to do anything. Now, had the Swedes taken an offensive, they could have grabbed Borgo, affected the peace treaty chances, and also taken, the supply away from the Russians, at least the land supply. Chances are very good that I'm going to try to get naval supply out there for the Russians, though. I've got a lot of supply points available, or a lot of ops points available, so I've got a lot of ability to launch more supplies that way. Uh-oh, looks like I'm out of time, so I guess this will be the end video, or the end of this video, and we'll go into May. We're not going to see anything significant happening there because still no orders, but at least there, On the naval side, we may see an engagement. It's going to be rough, though. The Russian fleet is heading this way. This fleet might collide with it. That's about the only, and that's not good for the Russians. All right, up we go.